So hello, everybody. Welcome today. I have a really terrific guest with me. Jason Treu is an executive coach who works with corporate executives, rising stars, and entrepreneurs to help them maximize their leadership potential, performance, and build and execute their career blueprint, which can include starting their own business. And for you that have been listening to my show, the Compassionate Capitalist Show, you know that's a big part of what I focus on is helping people start businesses and grow businesses and invest in businesses. So one of the things that's really interesting that we'll talk about is that he is the best-selling author of Social Wealth. It is a how-to guide on building extraordinary business relationships. And it's interesting when you hear the history of kind of how he came about getting into that and discovering the value of it. It's something that I have known to be very true in how you manage your relationships. I think one of the things that he has said is that, your legacy it comes from being rich in relationships, much more so than other things that we think when we're in the middle of it, that it's part of our legacy. And one of the things that I'm also impressed with is that he's a featured speaker at TEDxWilmington, in 2017. Sorry about that. Where he debuted his breakthrough team building game called Cards Against Mundanity. I think I said that correct.
Yes.
That will help improve team performance, communication, and collaboration in as little as 45 minutes. And there's some really remarkable things about what you accomplish in a corporate culture when you can create that environment of communication and collaboration. We'll talk about that. And finally, he is the executive of the Executive Breakthroughs podcast, which brings game-changing CEOs, entrepreneurs, and experts that share their breakthroughs and breakdowns. Because a lot of times we often fail our way to success. So, without further ado, welcome to the show, Jason Treu. I'm so happy that you're here with me today, and I think we're going to have a great time talking about these topics. So, I want to first ask, because it's always interesting to me when somebody has impacted the marketplace the way you have. And had sort of these breakthrough ideas that other people are benefiting from. What was your journey? How did you go from where you were to where you are now, and your path of discovery on this that you're able to share and help other people with?
Well, I mean, it all started when I was in law school. I was interviewing for jobs during my second year for my internship. And I went to New York City and I had a lot of interviews. And the last question, I was told to ask a softball question. And at the time, it was a very naive question, but I asked people, so are you happy? Right? Because I just wanted to have them an opportunity to talk about, what they were doing and excited about it. And I found that people really weren't, because they were really nervous. They didn't know how to answer the question compared to the whole interview. And it was the same at a partner level down to an associate from 30 some interviews. So I realized that this probably wasn't the road I wanted to go down to. So I decided to go to Silicon Valley and start in technology. And I got to work with a ton of great people, from, Steve Jobs at Apple to the acquisition with Mark Cuban when he got bought by Yahoo. And I got to work on a lot of different great projects with people. And so I got to learn a lot in a crazy time, a great high and an incredible low, obviously, as it all imploded and blew up. And then, I just went in startup world and started doing that. And I enjoyed that for a while, but that again, had its ups and downs. And then what happened, and this was just kind of a freak thing, was I had come to Dallas and I didn't know a single person. And I figured out some ways that I could meet a lot of people really quickly and a lot of great people. And I did a lot of that time to funnel it to working with charities and nonprofits and just helping other people. So I had two friends come to me who had other friends moving from one city to another, and they asked me to help them sort of make the transition. And I did. And their lives got substantially better in 90 days, basically. So I thought there was something here for a potential business because there wasn't anything out there to help people. So I approached someone with an existing business with a small nugget, how to build a better social life in 90 days or less. And the point in my head was, if I could get this moving, I could funnel it to a business arena. I could make the transition from here to something else. And, started with someone, had a falling out, and then just one on my own, wrote the book, found some people that were clients, tested out some theories, and it worked, and then it's off to the races.
Very good. Interesting. It's so interesting the journey life will take us when we're searching for something that we can be passionate about. So
yes,
really like that. Okay. So one of the things, when I was looking over some of so you did this book, you did the book, and then what triggered going from the book to the game? Because
I wanted to do a TEDx, something in there, and I did it a different process than probably 99.9% of people you'll talk to who've done a TEDx, is that I wanted to do something on building relationships, on corporate culture. And so I had that as a theme, but I looked for research to back up and get me the idea, not the other way around. So although I had extremely high level topic, right, there wasn't anything underneath it. And I spent 3 months trying to find the research that I thought was compelling to put together a talk that I could probably make some assumptions across some of the data and build enough of it to make a compelling argument for what I was going to do. So that's really kind of how I came up with it. And I want to do a how-to speech, because I think the problem with a lot of TEDx speeches, and I talk to people that are doing them, is that a big idea when you leave the stage doesn't help you. Because people, what are you going to do with it? Right now, you got to build the TEDx2 speech. How do you take the big idea and actually make it real, right? That's why there are so few how-to speeches. And even when I was giving my speech, someone gave a speech on corporate culture, and I had friends coming. And the one thing that they said about it was, looking at mine versus theirs looked intellectually lazy, because you couldn't do anything with it. There was no tangible takeaway that someone could go and execute and do. And in an environment like that, that's the whole point, right? It's a free thing where you're standing up there giving information, but telling someone you need a better corporate culture doesn't help someone, right? Unless you give them the tools and understanding of what is it that they have to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so on social wealth, let's talk a little bit about this value of relationships, because it's geared towards all, it's business relationship, but also based on what you described as you got started in this 90 days or less kind of a theory. It's all relationships, right? So it's all relationships make us feel better about everything, make us happier or whatever, having those good relationships. So social wealth is business and personal.
Yeah, it is, because the reality is that there are two things. One, people want to be successful and fulfilled. They don't want, they want both, right? Because fulfillment is the highest level that you can get. It's got everything's under that umbrella: happiness, love, everything that you want, right? And the reality is today is that when you walk into a business, loneliness is at the highest rate it's ever been. It's 40% of the US population, right? And if you look at the other data right now too, is that in 1980, when they surveyed several thousand people, they asked them, how many go-to people do you have that you can really confide in about problems, issues, or anything going on, right? And the answer was about 2 to 3 people. They did the survey again in 2015 or 16, and it was 0 to 1. So the issue today is, when you walk in a business, it's not work-life balance. It's not work integration. Work and your personal life are one in the same. There is no difference. Most people are getting their friendships and camaraderie out of work. They're not getting it outside of work, or they have very little that they're getting, or they have friendships that they've had for a while, but very few people are active in organizations where they're finding new people on a consistent basis that are actually on the same path they are. Most people just stay with other people at a default in their personal life. So the work people are actually the people that know them the best and spend the most time with.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's, I've, for many years when I was in the corporate world and currently, even though I run my own business, my husband's in the corporate world, right? And, you spend 40, 60, 70 hours a week away from your family doing work. And that's the people that And, to your point, if you don't, you said, I think one of your stats was 42% of the people have no friends at work. And if you're spending, the good portion of your waking hours someplace that don't have any friends there, or if you, as a result of that, you, like you say, you're not actively engaged, you become pessimistic about the work environment because there's not there's not that happy face you're looking forward to seeing when you get there, because there's this friend that you're going to, it used to be back, in the 80s and I guess in the 90s when we were going through some of our economic challenges, people were talking about water cooler talk, right? Well, water cooler talk is actually a good thing for corporate environments, even if you're not. And I think they had some stats because when I was at IBM, we were always sort of studying that it was okay because, you got refreshed and then you went back to your desk and you were into your desk versus just sort of being isolated in your desk and not ever doing that. And you just kind of, you exist.
And social connectivity, they're finding out, they've done studies and now proved that having social connections is the same equivalent as having food and water. You will die without them.
Wow, yeah.
They've now equated it to smoking 15 cigarettes a day, those people that are lonely. It's a higher propensity, people getting cancer, high blood pressure, all these other diseases that are linked to loneliness and people being there. And so I don't think people really properly understand the importance of social connections in their own life. And it's not just some made up thing. They're now, I can't remember the name of the professor, but he's in University of Chicago who's been doing studies for 30 or 40 years. And there's a whole load of research and people digging there that they have equated and figured it out that you'll live in early death, you will get sicker, your mental health issues. All these things will happen in your life if you don't have the proper connections and deep connections in your life.
I know there seems like there's a lot of articles, and it's probably based on the same research that I've seen that talk about how, women, in my case, because that draws my attention, live longer when they have those relationships and friendships that they have. And it really I think it totally goes to everything that you just talked about. And we are in the midst of a mental health crisis going on right now in our country. Sometimes we equate it when it's on the younger folk that it's because they've set these false sense of expectations of what their social life should be because of social media. And the reality is that nobody puts boring stuff on social media. One time, just for a joke, I took a picture of me, like here I am working. This is really exciting stuff. You know what I mean? Versus like all the social events that you go to. But social events aren't all your life, right? And so by kids that haven't lived through having all those normal boring stuff you do in your life don't really realize that everybody else is also doing boring stuff on a regular basis as well. And so, but I think it really much more goes to what you're talking about on understanding how to make relationships.
Yes.
Which is, I guess, a big part of what your book was all about. It was groundbreaking in teaching people how to make relationships. But it's understanding that and figuring out how to extend that. When I went through some stuff with my daughter, and because when we moved to a new place, I was able to develop these relationships. But I had a mission to do that because I wanted to have that kind of stuff, and it took effort, right? You got it because you have to spend time with people, getting to know them, and then bonding on those levels that you talk about of who you would confide in. And, it's not just something that happens instantly like they do in the movies. You know what I mean? It just doesn't happen. It takes effort, and it takes, finding commonality. And even in sort of the political climate that we have, some people say, well, how can you still be friends with them? Because I go, well, because when our relationship isn't based just on politics. Our relationship is based on a whole lot of other things, and we just don't talk about politics,
Yeah.
So So let's talk about this. So you mentioned Google earlier when we were talking. And so Google, you say, has created a very engaging environment, and it's impacted their productivity. And so describe a little bit about what they've done, or an example. I use them as an example of a company
Sure.
that addressed it versus those, and sort of that impact, because I know you have these numbers about the amount of productivity that's impacting the United States because of, and our, I guess, our contribution to the gross domestic product, because of our lack of this environment with these relationships in the business world.
Yep. So I think when you take a look at number one workplaces to work at, Google's always right at the top. I mean, Forbes publishes it every year, and while they may not be number one every year, they're pretty close to it. So something that I think people don't really realize is, because Google talks a lot about, hey, they give free lunches, dinners, and do the rest of these things. I mean, there's a lot of data around why they do those types of things. But ultimately, when they build this environment, they're always thinking about, how do we really maximize productivity, efficiency, and bringing people together, right? But they look for it in terms of, at a deep personal level, how do we connect people with their work? Because I think they understand that that is the key to unleashing people's real productivity. And I think the rest of the world, from the majority of it, don't really get that. They look at it as saying, how do we make an environment to make people more productive? But they don't look for it in this internal drive. Like, how do we find people get purpose at work, right? So one of the things that they do is, for their engineers, they give them a significant amount of time to work on any project that they want to do outside of work. It can be anything. They don't have to. It doesn't have to be related to anything they're doing, and that's something that's really interesting. But the thing, for when I did my TEDx talk and I looked into this, that I think is even more interesting is, in 2011, they set out to build the perfect team. So they looked at their top 180 teams at Google and wanted to understand the patterns of the people making them up, so they could basically take that as a blueprint and now create that team, whatever it might be, and whatever makeup would be on every other team inside of the company, because then the productivity would dramatically increase and rise in the company when they can figure this out, right? So they hired researchers from all the top institutions to come in, look at the data and the patterns that they already had, and then look at these teams and go talk to people and find out, like, what were they doing in order to make them at the top, right? And they couldn't figure it out. So this research lasted, I think it was 3 years, because they had a hard time correlating any of the data and patterns. And then one of the things that really helped them is, one of the researchers came across a team, and one of the team leads said that he had cancer and he may die, and shared this with the team, and they noticed the productivity in the team went up, right? So they did some other digging, and the only thing that they found across all of the teams, right, at Google, the only factor was psychological safety.
Oh yeah, you mentioned that in your thing. So what is that? I had a question mark. What is psychological safety?
Psychological safety is getting to know people on a deep personal level. It's being able to raise controversial questions inside of the group without getting ridiculed or something negative happen, and the ability to also just ask questions and be curious, right, inside of it. And those three things are what makes it up. I call it a fancy word for being able to be vulnerable with the people that you're with, right? And that is ultimately the key, right? And that is the key to the success of all of those teams, and the only ones. Doesn't matter whether they went to a great school. It doesn't matter that they had a super high IQ. Doesn't matter if they sold more than any other person, right? Doesn't matter what the dynamics of the individual are. If you can work inside of the team and you create psychological safety in that group, you can take a bunch of average people and they will outperform superstars, right? Period, right? I mean, it doesn't matter. And they've had a lot more data. I've researched studies too that have gone along with this. And if someone Googles a New York Times article with Google and Project Aristotle, there's tons of data in there that they go into more in depth on this as well. And I've looked at more too. So that's something I think is really important for people, is that if you create that inside your corporate culture, you will be able to beat companies and grow your business substantially very quickly. No matter if you're a 5-person shop or you're 10,000 people, you'll be able to beat the competition, and they will not be able to keep up, because working in a group dynamic will get people to work longer, harder, better, and they'll come up with better ideas. Even people that are average versus other people.
Yeah. So here I want to take just a break to say, anybody that wants to get more of this information, I think also see your TEDx speech, your book, all that stuff. It's available on Jason's website, which is Jason Treu, but it's spelled Treu. So it's jasontreu.com. And, go get, the information. There's a lot of good stuff there. You've got your game that you did on Reddit.
Yes.
It's available to download off of there.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the game, the Cards Against Mundanity. Did I say that?
Yes.
It's a tricky word there.
Yeah, it is. So the piece of research that I found along with Google's that to me was really unreal was, there's a professor, his name was Arthur Aaron. And in 1997, he was looking into how can I create fast friends from people? Like, snap my fingers and I can create a friend from you. Like, add your coffee to instant water and it would make you Starbucks, right? Whatever it might be. And he ran some experiments, and one of the ones he ran, which is the famous one that's come out of this, is that he had people sit down, complete strangers, graduate students that didn't know each other, had no background knowledge of the other person, and they sat down and they asked each other 36 questions over 45 minutes. And the questions ranged from, what was your favorite summer job, to more vulnerable ones, like, if you could do 1 year of your life over, which one would it be and why? And at the end of 45 minutes, they surveyed them, and they surveyed them in the beginning, and 30% of the people said that relationship with that complete stranger was the closest relationship in their life. They felt like it was.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Really?
45 minutes of doing it. And this is 1997. It's pre-social media. Really, the internet's in its early stage, and they've replicated this study dozens of times, and it's always the same. Like, they get the numbers are always consistent across the data set. So I think the point of that is that that's a way to create psychological safety with people, but also it's amazing how little we ask each other of really important, vulnerable questions. And that you're basically speeding up the cycle of becoming friends from 5, 10, 15, or 20 years to 45 minutes, and you can do it because it's worked, right? And if it didn't work, the other thing that came out of it was like 60% of people went out with each other afterwards on their own, and the study wasn't even measuring that. And one of the original people got married out of the study and invited everyone to the wedding. So that also is pretty good data set as well. But I think it's because once you have a card asking a question, that also helps, because normally when we ask each other questions that dig, we live in survival mode, which means our mind is not built to be happy, it's built to survive. And survival mindset is a negative mindset because it's trying to keep you safe. So if someone asks you a question, if you could pick 1 year of your life to do over, your mind is going to go immediately, because I've asked people and I've gone through it and had them write down what they first thought. They said, why are you asking me this? What are you trying to look into? Are you trying to find something negative, right? And that's what people's mindset immediately goes to. But on a card, it's pretty innocuous.
And I think you can pass, right? Everybody gets an opportunity to pass.
You can pass if you have a card you really don't want in there, because I felt like, it gives someone some safety, but I've really never had anyone pass when I've run it. I mean, everyone's answered the question, because when people start the other thing about vulnerability, which is really an important concept, is that everyone wants everyone to be vulnerable, but no one wants to lead.
Yeah.
But when you lead, what happens is you tell the other person it's safe to share with me. And so at that point, people will share anything with other people inside of a group. I mean, I've done these dozens of times, and I had people share, people have other issues in their own family, from having eating disorder and other things. I was really surprised that people would say. but they just do because they feel safe inside of a group in order to share information because other people are doing it. And then it just creates deeper and deeper relationships with people. And the other thing too that's powerful in a business is that you communicate, collaborate, let things go, want people to be successful, those people that you like and care about. Not necessarily even being friends, but like and care about. So what happens is you start maximizing people's social communication and emotional skill sets without teaching them and investing a dime.
Yeah, so I feel
right?
we need to, I'm sorry?
Is that so?
I just got a...
Yeah, I'm here.
You're here. Okay, I can see you, and we had a little blip in our
Yes.
audio there. So there's something I feel the need to sort of ask. Maybe it's that sense of survival or whatever go there thought process of mine as well. Is that, you know, will this kind of a process, because sometimes you'll get, if a company is going through struggles and there's dissatisfaction in the workplace, and then they bond, can it go sideways on a company because now there's a group of people that have bonded that are unhappy with management or something like that? And or is the kind of thing that this can get the company on more on track because now people automatically become more committed to the company? Or does it, you know, you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, I mean, I think that most people, what happens is it more affects the dynamics in the team and how they work with other people. So it actually improves situations overall. It doesn't make people dissatisfied and like mount something together. I think they just work better inside of the team, and they're better to actually bring things forward and talk about problems, right? And be much more forward on them, right? Because the problem is with most managers and people running a business is they don't really know what's going on because they don't connect with the people. And I've had executives do this where I've had them for 30 days walk around for 15 minutes inside of their office and talk to people only about personal things. And it's been business changing because every one of them get a lot more information about the business and things that they never knew was going on beforehand, right?
Yeah.
And it's 15 minutes a day, and that's it, right? I had them literally put a clock on saying, I don't want you, 16 minutes is unacceptable, go back. So it would make it that the bar was that low. And they notice a precipitative difference also in the company culture when they started to walk around.
I think there was a book, it was like from back in the 80s or maybe 70s. You probably know which one I'm talking about. It was the one where it recommended, it was like a little thin book. You walk around. It was 5 minutes, something, where it did exactly that. It was like to go and executives should go and walk around and you know, have those, get out of their office and be, you know, connect up with people on a personal basis like that. And it was at that time, it was probably in the 80s. That was you know, a very corporate culture changing kind of environment, because like I'd have managers that would come by and they go, well, I'm on my 5 minutes. So what's going on, you know, and stuff like that. And it did change because we related more to our bosses as a result of that. So absolutely. I love some of your questions because in the book, on the cards, it's like something glad you'll never have to do again, you know, that's something that's kind of like, oh, and hopefully you don't have a clown in the group that's going to like talk about, oh, I don't ever have to collate again or something like that. But even
if you do, I think it breaks up the because other people will lead with other answers. So
everybody answers the question, not just the one person?
No. But I mean, they'll have another question that they'll answer more seriously even if someone does make light of something else, right? Yeah. I think it all works inside of the dynamic, and a lot of people use humor to deflect. And they need to do that to warm up to what's going on. So, but the next time coming around, someone like that will get much more vulnerable as they see other people getting vulnerable.
So I'm going to ask you one of the questions. So what superpower would you like to have?
It would be to probably wake up like a jackrabbit out of bed in the morning. Cause sometimes I'm like, you know, you wake up in the morning, it's like, I'm a slow person to get up because I have more juice at night than I do early in the morning. So I just have to kind of like get myself up immediately and just start either go for a run, which I do quite often, or just get into whatever I'm doing and just push through it. And then the magic starts happening.
Yeah, I know. I hadn't really thought of that as being a superpower, but it sure would help. Me would probably be traveling at like the speed of light, because I could just,
Yes.
I hate wasting time in between things.
Yeah. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah. Okay, so part of what you do as the CEO's secret weapon, it's not so much a secret if you actually have it on your website, that people call you the CEO's secret weapon, which is, I think you say it's not such a secret, but
yeah.
So you're helping people that have kind of reached their sort of like the top of their game, identify how to break through and what to achieve even beyond that, and what might be achieving it, and thinking outside the box of whatever the box that they're in is, that's all they can do. And you have some examples on your website, but it's there's equal parts what do you say, psychological strategy coach.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's more, because most of it's really internally focused. I mean, I think that the reality is that people's blind spots and patterns that don't serve them, and the blueprint that they formed under the age of 10 years old, is what holds them back the most, right? And I think that's the problem that most coaches do, which I think does a complete disservice to the people that they help. Because to be honest with you, an example would be, I had a leader who was have a problem just getting up in front of people, and I think emotionally connecting to them. And the reason is because mommy and daddy told him to shut up all the time when he was growing up, and that he didn't really needed to talk at the dinner table, or only talk when he was spoken to quite a bit. And the problem there is he felt like all the time when he spoke up, he was an imposter, right? Because it was counter to what stuff ran intuitively inside of there. I had another person who was a salesperson, who was a woman, who had this tape running in the back of her head because her mom and grandmother complained all the time when they called her on the phone growing up that her voice was very high pitched. And if she didn't change it, she'd never be successful in life, never find a husband, and all the rest of this.
Oh, no.
So every time when she's dialing the phone, right, even as a successful manager working in a company, this is playing, right? So you have to take these things out and move beyond them, because it's not teaching her better sales skills, and it's not teaching that other executive how to be a better leader. It's working in the internal part, because if you teach them external skill sets, they'll get incrementally better, but they won't get exponentially better.
Yeah.
Right? So 75% of the problem for almost every single person is an internal issue. It's not what they think that it is.
Yeah, it's really interesting that parallel of how you because I was thinking about when I coach entrepreneurs on raising capital and how to go about raising capital. Usually it's dealt with at the seed level, but I tell them this is the skills that you will gain in this coaching experience is going to take you through every phase of raising capital, because a big challenge that a lot of entrepreneurs have is asking for the money, because they have some tape rolling in their head about money and asking for money and whether they are worthy of receiving money. And so I have a book that was used with me when I went through a business coaching session, with a business coach. And it's about negative thinking and stopping the little voice mastery is the book. Okay. And that's what you're talking about. And I needed to do that myself with the little tapes like you just were describing. Okay. I now laugh loudly and proudly, even though for years and years and years I was told that I had a really loud and obnoxious laugh by my mom. And so, but now I just I love to laugh, so I laugh. And so that's one of those little things. But on an aside, it's those little voices in your head that will keep you from achieving success in your life, in your relationships, and everything. And when it comes to companies raising capital for their business, it's a huge part of it is that follow up and follow through, that will assume the investor's going to say a no. So they'll either not even bother following up, or they will only call once when they go to follow up, instead of thinking, well, the guy's just busy or out of town or whatever, you know. And it's a big part of the sales process, as well as, you know, the raising capital and getting past those hidden fears that you might have. So, and then the other thing about it is, and I've been talking to a couple of different folks, because, you know, my whole idea on my book on Inside Secrets to Angel Investing is this idea of compassionate capitalism. And there becomes a thing I noticed in one of your examples of somebody getting involved in boards and nonprofit boards. And I was at a leadership thing over at Emory last week, and they were talking about, you know, some people call it impact investing. So they invest their time and their stuff into things that, you know, they feel have an impact. And it's a big part of, you know, this definition of the joy you get out of your job or your career, or even if you've built a business. And then how can you expand that and explore other aspects of things, because you feel like there's a hole inside you, right? And so, you know, in my case, compassionate capitalism is that you're investing in other entrepreneurs' passions, and you share in that passion as you do that, beyond what you're doing just from a corporate standpoint and all of those kind of things. And so to take a few minutes here, we're almost out of time, but, you know, sort of talk about what's a golden nugget that you would give if you were standing up on a stage or here at this podcast interview. You know, what's a golden nugget that you would want an executive that's listening to this podcast, whether they're in a startup or built a big company, or just an executive in a big company, what would be the one question they should ask themselves that would say, you know what, there is an opportunity. I can have more. I can feel better. I can this stuff. Is there one question they could ask themselves that would be a trigger to say, you know what, maybe I should go check out Jason's stuff, or I should go look into this, or I should do some things? What's the one question?
Yeah, I would say to someone, do you know your blind spots? And can you share them succinctly with that same audience that you're standing in front of? Right? Because if you've done the work, you'll be able to tell people and stand there in uncertainty and share information with them, and be okay not knowing the answers even.
So then.
So, yeah, I mean, if you know your blind spots, right, you can basically say to someone, you know, one of the blind spots that I have is that I've had a hard time emotionally connecting with people because of family history and other issues in my life. And how I got off it is I had to push through it, right, and just start sharing more of myself and getting in front of people and doing things that made me feel really uncomfortable, right?
Okay. That whole getting out of your comfort zone thing to grow.
Right, for that, in that example. But I think if you can't answer the question, do you know what your blind spot is, and can you succinctly share it with other people, and be in a moment where you're probably going to feel uncomfortable and share a very vulnerable moment with people, you really haven't done the work, and you aren't going to be a successful leader, because you'll never be able to connect with people and drive them, because you need to touch people in a very emotional way, because that's how human beings are driven in a business, no matter whether they're men or women.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, Jason, thank you very much for coming on the Compassionate Capitalist radio show or video show and sharing your insights and your experiences and the impact that you've had on multiple people and organizations. And I want to encourage everybody to go to JasonTreu, Treu.com, and get his information, get the book, understand how to develop relationships, get the game, start impacting, and, you know, see about, he's got 3 programs that you can learn about on his website on how he helps individuals and organizations, you know, be better at everything that they like to do in their lives, their personal lives, their business lives, their objectives. And so, and to get more information about me and all of the services that I offer, go to KarenRands.co, KarenRands.co, and you can learn about my book and all the programs that we have as well, and other podcasts. So thank you again, Jason. And thanks. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to continuing our new relationship as well.